The handsome babe magnet rides again. When I got home that afternoon, I was starving. I decided to make some oatmeal. That's kind of my tradition when I'm uptight about something. I guess there are worse things I could do under stress, right? Some kids do drugs, some kids light stuff on fire. Me? I heat oats. It started when I was a little kid. My parents liked to sleep late, so Stephen used to make me oatmeal for breakfast. That was the best. No grown-ups in sight, a hot meal in front of me, and my big brother by my side. Then, when I got a little older, I started making the oatmeal for Stephen. I remember the morning after his high school prom when I was 9. I brought him oatmeal in bed at 8 a.m. He chased me out of the room by throwing about 15 pillows and pieces of dirty laundry at me. Then about 5 minutes later, he came out to the kitchen and said, "So where's my oatmeal, you little madman?" I wonder if they have oatmeal in Africa. I bet they do, but they probably call it ukumani or something, and I bet they throw a few really disgusting many-limbed bugs into the pot for flavor. I kind of hope so. Anyway, the key to oatmeal, Alper Brothers style, is your milk-to-water ratio. It's got to be a 50-50 mixture. Once you got that down, you can basically chuck anything in there as long as it's sweet. Myself, I'm big on berries or honey and nuts. Stephen once made a batch with flaming bananas on top, but I'm not that brave. Plus, sometimes my hand shakes, so the flame part could get ugly. On this day, I had my water and milk going on the stove, my oats standing by in a measuring cup, and a little pack of craisins mixed with brown sugar ready to be dumped in at the end. As I stirred the liquid, I started thinking about Lindsay Abraham. I had never really liked a girl before. I had noticed a ton of girls in my life, and I had a lot of female friends, but nobody had ever rocked my whole entire planet out of this orbit in 2 days before, and she seemed to be flirting with me. On the other hand, I figured I had no shot with her whatsoever. For one thing, she was probably flirting with everybody. She was at a new school with no connections, and she was ultra beautiful, so why wouldn't she be checking out all of her options? And let's face it, I was nobody's idea of the hottest guy in 8th grade. Here's a partial list of male 8th graders who put me to shame. Matt Hanazak, sports stud. Dylan Stranier, once appeared in a commercial. David Niedermeyer, lives in a mansion, hosts pool parties. Josh Albert is nearly as good looking as his famously hot cousin Renee. That one goth kid with the black crosses on his guitar, even though he wears eyeliner. Even if she were somehow, against all odds, a bit interested in me, I knew that would all change once we had the conversation. Every cancer survivor out there has had the conversation a million times, and it never goes well. You kind of try and hem and haw to put it off, to pretend you don't limp everywhere and carry a laptop to all your classes, but ultimately, anyone who might become friendly with you must find out about your cancer history. And people say the stupidest crap in the world to you right after it comes out. Here are 3 possibilities drawn from my worst experiences. Me. Well, you see, I'm a cancer survivor. Person number 1. And how's that working out for you? Me. Well, you see, I used to have leukemia. Person number 2. Dude, how come you're not, bald? Me. Well, you see, I had acute lymphocytic lymphoma when I was 5. Person 3. Whoa, that must have sucked. I once had my tonsils out. So how in the world was I ever supposed to get a girlfriend? There's enough that can go wrong in a normal boy-girl interaction without throwing in all of my baggage. But if a regular, ordinary relationship is like juggling a bunch of different-sized, jagged pieces of metal, and from what I had been going on between my brother and Annette, that seemed to be a pretty good simile, then throwing cancer into the mix is like juggling a bunch of different-sized, jagged pieces of metal while riding a skateboard on the edge of the Grand Canyon. Lindsay Abraham could have her pick of any guy she wanted, so why would she choose me? But I thought she was totally joking around with me and Jim about her butt. Don't get your hopes up, but she was. But you're a short, chubby kid with glasses, a limp, and brain damage. And your oatmeal is boiling over. By the time my parents came home, I had managed to scrub about 80% of the burned, milky goo off the burner. Mom made pasta for dinner, and the garlic scent mostly covered up the lingering odor of my disaster. As we sat down to eat, Dad wanted to know all about my academic subjects, as usual, but Mom had other ideas. "Jeffrey, who's this Lindsay girl?" I nearly choked on a chunk of bread, but managed to say, "What, huh?" Thankfully, my windpipe cleared from the force of the huge coughing fit that followed, because it would be pretty embarrassing to have "wha" as my last words. "Oh, Jeffrey, I just ran into Mrs. Ibsen at the market. She told me all about your new friend. Tad said she's a glamorous new girl who's swept you off your feet." Mom put her elbows on the table and leaned all the way toward me. "So what's the deal?" On second thought, maybe I should have just choked. I looked away from her and caught Dad's eye. If there's one thing my father gets, it's how to avoid difficult topics. "Wow," he said. "Honey, this sauce is delicious. What do you call it?" Mom rolled her eyes. "Ragu. Now tell us about Lindsay, Jeffy." So much for Dad's change the subject ploy. "Oh, she's very nice." Mom looked happier than I'd seen her in a long time. "Honey, look, our baby has a little girlfriend, and he's blushing all over her. This is just like the time when Renee Albert came over to tutor Stephen in math. Do you remember that, Jeffy? You were 5, and you kept asking your brother whether he was going to kiss her. I thought he was going to curl up in a ball and die of embarrassment. But then, when she got to the house, she had a cold, and yeah, I remember that one. My immunity was wrecked from the chemo, so Stephen didn't let Renee into the house. It is freaking uncanny how every single memory in the world ties back into having cancer. But at least I didn't have to talk about Lindsay anymore. I was going to kill Tad the next time I saw him. "Speaking of tutors, Mrs. Ibsen told me that Tad is going to be helping you with math this year. I'm so proud of you." I gulped. "You are?" "Yes, for taking the initiative like this. You've always been so passive about school. It's nice to see that you're taking matters into your own hands before there's a problem." "Huh. Thanks, Mom." Dad looked up from his plate where he was busily cutting pasta and veggies into little separate piles. It used to drive Stephen crazy, but that's just how Dad rolls. "And who am I kidding? It kind of makes me want to scream too." "That's great, Jeff. Very responsible of you." Holy cow, getting called responsible by my dad is like getting called intelligent by Albert Einstein. "Oh," my mom said, "you'd better finish up your dinner, Jeff." "Why?" "Because Mrs. Ibsen is bringing Tad over at 6:30. We figured there's no time like the present." Geez, it was the second day of school. How much tutoring could I possibly need after only 2 math lessons? As I got up to put my plate in the dishwasher, the doorbell rang. Apparently, I was about to find out. I went down to the garage and opened the door. We had a bell installed there just for Tad because the front steps is a problem for him. He rolled in, made his way to the desk in our family room, and immediately booted up his computer. Some people say hello when they barge into a friend's house." "Yeah, and some people waste time and fail math. Sit down, young Jedi. It's time to begin your training." Oh boy, this is going to be a long year. As soon as the computer was ready, Tad slid it over to me. To my horror, he was starting me right off with word problems. The more I read, the more horror I felt. Here was the first one. "Lindsay is on a train that leaves Grand Central Station at noon. Jeffrey is on a bus leaving from Port Authority at 1 p.m. They're both going to Love City, 120 miles away. If Lindsay is traveling at 60 miles per hour and Jeff is moving at 45 miles per hour, how long will she have to wait for him in Love City?" I looked at Tad. "Where'd you get this?" He smirked. "Easy. There's this website called MathLibs. They're just like Mad Libs, but with word problems. I decided if they can do it, I can do it, and boom, here we go. Now get to work." By the end of an hour with Tad, I felt like my brain was going to explode in a gooey, slimy spray all over the keyboard. I asked for a break, and he grudgingly granted me one. So I went upstairs to get some drinks. When I got back down, I said, "So why are you obsessed with Lindsay Abraham?" He raised an eyebrow as he set himself up with some milk and an organic fig bar. "We're used to some odd snacks. Both of our moms seem to believe that if they just keep our lives non-toxic enough, we'll never get sick again." Anyway, when his mouth was as revoltingly full of mush as possible, he said, "Dude, I am not obsessed with Lindsay Abraham. I'm the total opposite of obsessed with Lindsay Abraham. If obsessed with Lindsay Abraham were the sun, my feelings for her would be Pluto, so far from obsession that they're not even a planet in the same solar system." I think Tad and I might be a little bit obsessed with Pluto. Aha, I said. So you admit your feelings for her revolve around obsession. That's a rather tortured metaphor. You started it. He sighed. Jeff, I'm not obsessed with Lindsay. You are. Am not. That's very mature and logical. I'd imagine Lindsay would be highly impressed. I forced myself to take a deep breath. There have been many, many times in my life when all that stood between me and strangling Tad was one deep breath. Okay, I think she's attractive, all right? It's not like I'm going to make a move anyway. I don't even know how to make a move, and I don't see why you have to make a whole stupid math workbook about it. What if she likes you back? He asks. Then she'll have to wait in line for me behind your mom. No, I'm serious. She doesn't like me back. Lindsay, I mean. Your mom is totally into me. Ha ha, I think Lindsay might like you. Why not? She was checking you out in gym, I could tell. Oh, because you're such an expert? Thanks, Dr. Ruth Dorkheimer. Look, Jeff, when you're all the way at the edge of the action in a wheelchair, you see things. Oh, so all of a sudden, having bad legs turns you into the girl whisperer? No, it's just everybody's afraid to stare at me, so they try not to look at me at all. While they're not looking at me, I can study them. And believe me, I think you have a shot with Lindsay. And this is your business, why? He took a deep breath, which was odd. That was my job. Tad never stopped to get control of himself. You know, after my bone marrow transplant when I was in isolation, I used to wonder about all kinds of stuff. Am I going to graduate from high school? Am I going to drive a car? He looked away from me. Will I live long enough to kiss a girl? But I never thought about whether there was a girl in the world that could ever be interested in kissing me. Now I wonder that. I was stunned. Tad never opened up like this. Don't worry, buddy. The next time I go out with your mom, I'll ask whether she has a friend for you. He threw a number 2 pencil at me, then he busted out with a pack of flashcards and started dealing. Apparently, it's a bad idea to mock the tutor's mom. Fun, but bad.